welcome. Thank you for joining me today. We're going to be celebrating forages today for National Forage Week. Today we are at the Field Extension Education Laboratory at Iowa State University, where we got a lot of different demos going on, and some that are forage related and a lot of crop related demos as well. But today, right now, I'm standing in front of our weed garden, and we have our musk thistle. Musk thistle has been a pretty big problem in a lot of our pastures this year. And so one of the big problematic things with musk thistle is all these thorns that it has on it. And so it really deters grazing from occurring, not just the plant, but generally you have an exclusion zone as well. So you're losing utilization due to problems like musk thistle. At this point, this musk thistle is really developed. We've already gone through the bolt stage, and so it's a biennial. So the first year it's in a rosette, it stays close to the ground, and then in the second year it'll bolt up and start to produce seed heads. We're going to start seeing it bloom here in just probably a few days, or early next week we'll start seeing blooms on this. And you can see musk thistle has really large blooms on it, and they're going to be like a purplish pink color. And at this point in time, herbicides aren't going to control this very well. We've already gone to the bolting stage. It's going to go into seed production, and we're not going to be able to control with herbicides. But it's a really good time that you could potentially mow it to knock it back and eliminate some of those weeds. Now next to it, I know this is a little contradictory, we have alfalfa, which is one of our main forage species that we use. It's also known as the queen of forages. I guess it could be considered a weed if it's in a, say, soybean field. But we use this a lot in hay production, and Iowa actually has a considerable amount of hay. We're within the top 10 hay producing states in the nation. And so alfalfa is a really great forage due to its high crude protein, really digestible fiber, and when it's cut well, and it's high producing, and it's a perennial. So we have a lot of different benefits from alfalfa. At this point, it probably should have been cut a few weeks back. We're starting to see a lot of these purple blooms on it, but it's a great forage. And we're going to talk about this a little bit more in just a second and talking about alfalfa auto. So now we're going to continue talking about alfalfa forages, and hay production. Iowa has a lot of hay production, so it's a great opportunity for us to really explore our potentials with alfalfa. Alfalfa is actually in the top 5 crops produced in the U.S., and it doesn't get its credit where it's due. It is a very high quality forage with a good amount of crude protein, high yielding, and it's a perennial, so it comes back every year, and you don't have to worry about replanting it. But over time, your alfalfa stand will decline. Typically, depending on your alfalfa cutting schedule, this could happen within a few years to 5 or 6 or 7 years if you're a little bit more relaxed on that cutting schedule. A lot of our dairy producers, they really are looking for high quality alfalfa, so you cut it a little earlier on a more rigorous cutting schedule, up to 4 to 5 cuttings a year, where a lot of beef producers are looking more for quantity, and so they're pushing those cutting regimens out and only getting about 3, maybe 4 cuttings a year. And so this stand here is an old alfalfa stand. It hasn't been cut yet. We kind of got unlucky with some rains and just hadn't had an opportunity, and it's supposed to rain tomorrow again. But you can see it's fully flowered out. But as we can look at it, we're starting to see weed pops up. This is actually an older stand, and it was in declining health. And when we did some stand counts earlier this year, it was starting to indicate that we may want to think about rotating out or interseeding. And so as we're thinking about that, why should we rotate out instead of just going back to alfalfa? Well, this is the reason right here. Right off to the left of me, we had terminated this stand early spring and came back in a day later and planted alfalfa into alfalfa. And so alfalfa has an autotoxic compound. It causes autotoxicity to itself. And so it inhibits basically alfalfa from growing well in soil followed by alfalfa. And so we can see here, we got a really good weed patch. We're starting to see, we can see some alfalfa plants coming in, but it is not a good stand at all. It would not be an acceptable stand to keep. We have more weeds than anything else as we're looking at this stand. And what's interesting is we actually planted 2 varieties in this stand to show that it's not really variety specific. There are some thoughts that some varieties may be more susceptible to autotoxicity than others, but for the majority, all of our alfalfas are autotoxic and will have a hard time growing. It's going to limit its root and shoot growth, and we're not going to see very good production, and this stand's not going to last. As we think about it, you may be like, well, I see a few plants here and there, and alfalfa can fill in. Well, a lot of times, initially, we're looking for like more than 50 plants per square foot after germination. We really have a lot of plants that we want to be able to come in to be able to compete with these weeds. And then over time, those plants start to fall out of the stand to down to 4 to 5, and they start to branch out a lot. But this can really show you the importance of a rotation and getting out of alfalfa for at least a year. That year will help with breaking down that toxin in the soil, getting a different plant in there. So like going into, say, a sorghum Sudan grass for the summer could be really beneficial in helping break that cycle. And so this is just a quick demo showing you a little bit about why autotoxicity is a concern. We really need to rotate out of alfalfa. Thank you, and we'll join us in just a little bit as we go and talk about silage production. Next stop on our forage tour, we're over here at the Agricultural Engineering and Agronomy Farm, or this is more specifically the Sorensen Farm. We are in central Iowa, just around Ames still, just down the road from Field. And where we're at right now is a silage trial. And silage is a great forage. If alfalfa is the queen of forage, silage is our king of forages. Corn silage particularly is a very energy dense product with that starch component from that corn grain that's in there, and with that balance between the fiber content of the stalk and the leaves. And so we're in a corn silage and actual sorghum silage trial, specifically over here on my left. Like I said, corn silage is a great silage, high tonnage, high energy. It's really good at producing. A lot of people like it for the ease of management because it's really close, very similar to managing corn grain. And in Iowa, we know we can do a lot of corn grain, but we also do a lot of corn silage. We are the number 6 in corn production, corn silage production, and number 7 in total acres. So we actually have a lot of animals that we feed here. And so as I mentioned, corn silage is a great silage opportunity. In this trial specifically, we're actually looking at silage alternatives because corn silage is not our only type of silage. Forage sorghum is another great option. And when I started here at Iowa State, we were in a 3-year drought, and everybody was asking about what else can I plant just in case as a savior crop. And forage sorghum is a great opportunity in that sense. It needs less water typically. It's a little cheaper to grow, but typically we don't see that energy content so much. It doesn't have as much starch, and it's hard to release that starch at times. But there are great varieties out there. And so in this trial specifically though, we're looking at it, sorghum silage as an alternative in disease pressure areas. And so when you grow a lot of one thing, and Iowa grows a lot of corn, sometimes we start to see more disease pressure and insect pressures coming in. And that all can impact overall quality and yield, and potentially its ability to ferment and produce a stable stored forage feed. And so in this trial, one of the new diseases that's kind of been impacting throughout the Midwest is tar spot. And so tar spot in silage, generally what could happen is if it onsets at a heavy level, we could start to see early dry down, and we could see a decline in sugar content and then overall yield as well. A big problem with early dry down is if we get too low of a moisture content in our silage, it's not going to pack well in that pile or in that bag, and so we're going to get air pockets in there, and we're not going to have a good fermentation process occur, and we're not going to have that good stored feed. A lot of these disease pressures, we could be seeing loss of crops, loss of yield for that year, unless we maybe have something else to use as well. And so this is the concept of that savior crop I mentioned a little bit ago. But sorghum silage can produce a lot of tonnage as well. It can be high quality as well. And so it's another opportunity. And so this trial specifically looking at sorghum silage as an alternative in tar spot areas. And this could also be kind of similar to drought prone areas or corn rootworm area. Overall, is a great stored forage feed, and it's a great opportunity for our forage producers to produce a high quality high energy product. So, and finally, for Forage Week, we're going to start talking about pastures. Unfortunately, McNay's a little bit far of a drive, so we're going to do this a little bit differently and virtually. Pastures are the base to our grazing systems in Iowa. They're one of the most economically friendly forage sources, as we don't have to bring out the tractor and we don't have to worry about storing it. Our animals are doing the work and grazing that forage. So today, when we talk about pastures, we're going to talk a little bit about pasture evaluation. And the reason that this topic is one that I selected is because a lot of our pastures have taken a hit. As I mentioned previously, we've gone through a lot of drought years, a lot of unknowns in weather and droughts going into the fall. And as many of our pastures are perennial crops, that fall drought and overgrazing can impact what is happening in the spring. And so one of the first things that I think about when I'm thinking about pasture evaluations is the NRCS Pasture Conditioning Score Guide or score sheet. This is a really helpful tool that makes you be honest with what's in your field and what you're looking at, and going in and digging in and looking at multiple areas in the field to really get a good idea of where you're at. And so the photo that I'm showing you above is actually a really nice thick stand of grasses and legumes in a mixture. And so one of the first things that you want to do is when you're looking at your stand is one, you're looking for bare spots. You're looking for holes and gaps. Are you seeing a lot of them? Or is it mostly covered and you have a nice canopy closure? You're looking also at what kind of species are you seeing? Are you seeing a lot of weeds or are you seeing a lot of beneficial species? Are you seeing multiple different types of beneficial species? Especially in our pastures, we're looking for a considerable number of different species, like 4 to 5 beneficial species that can be in there. So maybe that's 1 or 2 cool season grasses with a legume and a broadleaf. And so all of these things are going to really help maximize your pasture productivity. And I know that we've had a lot of struggles over the years, so you can go through this score sheet, really being honest with where you're at, and then that can help you inform your decision on how to maximize productivity for the coming years. And so that could look like interseeding this coming fall, renovating a section of your pasture, and really maximizing that productivity in the area you have. And now I'd like to take a second to start to look at what we're seeing in our fields. And so these are some photos taken down at McNay, and we're looking at 2 separate photos in different areas of a pasture. And so what do you see? What species are you seeing? Are you seeing the ground? Are you seeing a thick stand? Are all some things that we should be thinking about. And as we can see on the photo on the left, we're starting to see a little bit more weed encroachment. There's some thistle, and we can see some pennygrass coming in, while we can still see some beneficial species as well, such as tall fescue and orchard grass. While the photo on the right, we're starting to see a few more beneficial species, such as alfalfa, tall fescue, and orchard grass, and I don't really see any weed pressure in that photo either. And so what we can start to do is that pasture conditioning score sheet will start to rank these and give you a value to understand what you may need to do to ensure high productivity. Another part of this, it's going to ask you your legume percentage. Legumes are great to have in the field as they fix nitrogen that can be used for the grasses as well, so you don't need to apply external fertilizer, but that's when the legumes are at about 30% dry matter. But we don't want to have too much legumes either, because then we could be running into concerns with bloat. And so having a balance. In this photo, we are seeing a lot of alfalfa. And so if that's what your whole field looks like, you may be wanting to think about strategies to limit the bloat concern. Like, don't let your animals out hungry. Make sure that they're full so that they can slowly adapt. Bloat blocks are all different things that we can be thinking about to help manage our pastures. And overall, that guide's going to make sure that we have the most productive pastures we can. And one last thing I'd like to mention before we end this little segment for our Forage Week is that when we start to implement or interseed or renovate these new pastures, let's start trying to take care of them as best as we can. And understandably, we may have limitations due to the environment, but
rotational grazing can really help uh, ensure a healthy stand by maximizing its productivity, giving those plants a break, allowing those roots to grow, and giving our forages the best chance they can to survive. And so, with that, thank you so much for joining us today. And if you would like to learn more about forages or you have questions, please reach out to your local field agronomist from the Iowa Beef Center, myself, Shelby Gruss, Forage Extension Specialist. Our information is on the slide. Additionally, if you would like to interact with more forage producers in the area, please check out Iowa Forage and Grassland Council. It is a great way to network, learn more about the forage and forage research that's happening in the state, and just to see what different people are doing. And thank you and enjoy your National Forage Week.